Good afternoon. While we wait for everyone to join us, I want to introduce the panelists, the National Volunteer Fire Council, and myself, as well as how we're going to unfold today's event. My name is Michael McLeieer, and I'm a 25-year fire service veteran. I'm also the president of Escape Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that provides safe, effective, and economical fire life safety training to children and adults of all ages. I'm also the former president of the Michigan State Firemen's Association. Today, I'm joined by Ashley Gocken, the brand and PR manager for Newell Brands, the parent company of First Alert, and our sponsor of today's event. And Monica Colby, a fire life safety educator with the Rapid City, South Dakota Fire Department and NVFC Fire Corps representative for the state of South Dakota. Before we begin, I would like to briefly introduce the NVFC, who is hosting today's discussion. The NVFC is the leading nonprofit membership association representing the interests of the volunteer fire, EMS, and rescue services. Their mission is to provide a unified voice for volunteer fire and EMS organizations. They provide resources, training, advocacy, and programs to help the volunteer emergency services thrive. You can learn more about the NVFC and what they do at www.nvfc.org. If you're not a member, I want to encourage you to join. It only costs $18 a year and comes with a variety of benefits such as an AD&D policy, free training in the NVFC virtual classroom, access to the Volunteer Voices member community, and much more. You can learn more at www.nvfc.org/join. As I mentioned, First Alert is the sponsor of our discussion today, so I'd like to take a moment to thank them for their support and for helping us facilitate this important discussion. Fire departments play a critical role in educating the public about fire safety and the importance of having properly installed and working smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. Daylight saving time begins on March 14th. And this is traditionally a time when fire departments remind the public to change their smoke and CO alarm batteries while also changing their clocks. While many existing alarms still utilize replaceable batteries, newer alarms are equipped with 10-year sealed batteries. This presents a new challenge to fire departments. The traditional message of change your clocks, change your batteries will soon be outdated. Today's discussion will focus on updated messaging the department should be providing, as well as how to communicate to the public the importance of having both CO and smoke alarms. We have a list of questions to get us started, and which the panelists and I will discuss. However, we also want to hear from you and make sure that we cover any questions you have. If you do have questions, please write them in the comment section below, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we have time for. So first, I'd like to start with you, Monica.
All right.
Would you explain what carbon monoxide is and why is it so dangerous?
Absolutely, and thank you for letting me be on with this. So carbon monoxide, it's a gas that you cannot see, you cannot smell, you cannot taste, but it is present when something burns, and it is not burning completely. So it's the stuff that comes out of the back of a car that can kill people, that, it can be stuck in your garage when you're warming up your car. And we know that that's a risk, but it's also something that can be present when you have a furnace that's burning natural gas or propane. And generally it goes through the flue, it goes through the pipes and up out into the air in the atmosphere and dissipates. But if there's any crack inside, that can then start to fill your house. So we tend to feel sick, like we're having the flu, and we now are so aware of all the flu symptoms. You might think that you have COVID, or you might think that you just have a headache, but it could be carbon monoxide poisoning, and you just don't realize it. One of the things that's really dangerous with it is it starts to make your brain stop working. So you stop thinking about, oh no, I'm sick, something's wrong. And it can put you into a coma and can kill you. It makes it so that your your cell at a cellular level, but the oxygen is not transferring right. So your red blood cells are going through your body and exchanging oxygen in your lungs. And as the oxygen comes in, carbon monoxide likes to stay on that red blood cell. It's kind of like a big bully, and it kicks the oxygen off. And so the red blood cell takes carbon monoxide through again. Instead of exhaling carbon dioxide and inhaling oxygen and going to the blood, it's now kind of stuck there. So it's not delivering the oxygen to your body that you need. And of course, that's essential for all of our organs and especially our brain to function.
That's a great description. Thank you for sharing that with us so that we all understand how dangerous it is. It's the invisible killer. How can departments effectively communicate to their communities rather the importance of installing both smoke and carbon monoxide alarms?
So definitely in the traditional change your clock, change your battery time is where most people are aware of it, and the media is already ready to share that message. In Rapid City, in most of South Dakota, we talk in the springtime about making sure you have a tornado or weather alarm working, and talk a lot about carbon monoxide and making sure that's working. And then in the fall, we spend our time talking about smoke alarms and the combination of alarms. Just the one or the other, and checking those batteries once a year and making sure the alarms are working. But getting that message out, particularly as we hit those winter months when we're more likely to be heating, we're more likely to have the car in the garage. You might have a self-starter on the garage, on the car, and it's still in the garage and you don't know that it's running. So it tends to be a time when we see more carbon monoxide. So as we talk about heating fires, we're also talking about carbon monoxide, and warning people about the dangers. Two, a lot of alarms are coming connected together, so it's just kind of one and the same. One message really does. Anytime I talk smoke alarms, we talk carbon monoxide too. So there's the National Volunteer Fire Council with, we were just talking about that, Fire Corps. There's some great messages there on their website. First Alert and other detection companies, they have good information on their website. NFPA has free tip sheets and a whole website about carbon monoxide. And United States Fire Administration has some great pictograms so that it's not language mandatory, what I've needed. So you can give this information in any language. And I like those pictograms because I'm a scanner. I will look at your bullet points and your heading, and I won't read any of the rest of the information that comes, but pictures, I can walk by a set of pictures and I know what you're talking about. So I like using those too.
Absolutely. And we'll put links to all of that so that everyone is pointed back to those great and fabulous free resources that are out there. When you were talking about the remote engine start and people warming their vehicles up in garages, some people may not realize that carbon monoxide actually can seep through drywalls. And many of the bedrooms in a ranch style home are right along that garage wall. And the other problem we have, especially as you mentioned, severe weather season, as we're going into the time when we may lose power, people
Mhm.
inappropriately using those generators is another key source for carbon monoxide poisoning. So making sure that those generators are away from inlets, vents, and making sure they're well away from the home and not even in that garage where the garage door is open, making sure they're completely outside of the structure.
Right. We
Great
think
tips.
there's air traffic, air movement, but there's not as much as you think. And even especially during power outages, even cooking inside, generally we barbecue outside and we know that's safer, but when it's super cold outside, we want to bring that in or in emergencies, and that charcoal can provide that carbon monoxide as well.
That's a great point, Monica. Thanks for sharing that. We often forget about those things and we get busy. We want to try and have that family meal and plan. And now the weather is not conducive to that being outside. So we move everything inside. Maybe not a safe choice. So that's a great point. I'm glad you were able to remind everybody of that. The next question, what I'd like to do, and this is going to be for all three of us, and Ashley, I think what I'd like to do is start with you on this one. Daylight saving time, which is coming up, has traditionally been a great opportunity for the fire departments to get messaging out about the importance of having working smoke alarms with succinct messaging of change your clocks and change your batteries. However, with some households continuing to use alarms with replaceable batteries, and many homes today are equipped with that 10-year sealed battery alarm, what messages should the department be imparting to incorporate both of these alarm types? And what are some types of effectively communicated messaging that we can get out to our public?
Yeah, so daylight saving time has always been synonymous with change your clocks, test your alarms, change the batteries in your alarms. But, at the popularity of tenured sealed battery alarms, those alarms eliminate the need for battery replacements and those late night battery trips for a decade. But it's still so important that you test your alarms and you check your alarms regularly. So with daylight saving time, it would, the new messaging or the updated messaging with tenured sealed battery alarms would be change your clocks. When you change your clocks, check your alarms.
Absolutely. Great tips. Monica, do you have anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, definitely when it comes to those batteries, we've got a few different types out there. So those sealed battery packs that when it starts to chirp, you just replace the whole thing. But also there's some longer life batteries that you might be able to get to pull out, but we want you to leave them in there because that helps reduce that need for maintenance. So generally we talk about checking those alarms, knowing the difference between the different sounds, but that if you have the older type of batteries, that is something that you'd want to replace at least annually. But the newer ones, you might not need to. So you need to know what you have in your home. And even as a renter, while they might be the ones that are taking care of it, that's something that I would make sure and keep an eye on for myself.
And it's not just the battery maintenance. I think all three of us would agree. It's making sure that that alarm is not past that 10-year recommendation cycle for smoke alarms. The older carbon monoxide alarms were even at a 5 or 7-year cycle.
Right.
A lot of the new technology out there is lasting a little bit longer, but follow your manufacturer's recommendations. If you don't know the last time the alarm was installed, or you bought a home and you don't know how old the alarms are, might be a good opportunity to update with the latest technology.
You talk about latest technology too. It's not even just in the batteries. The alarms are now, the detector pieces of it are using carbon monoxide as an essential part for that fire alarm, that detection, and it's doing a double check. So those nuisance resistance alarms that are out there now, those are fantastic. They don't go off for smoking bacon, only for burning on fire flaming bacon. They don't go off for the shower steam. And that's because it knows whether there's carbon monoxide or not just whether there's something in the air. So getting those combination units, you can get a really smart system that way.
Absolutely. I'm glad you shared that, Monica. Thank you. One of the points I'd like to bring up, if anyone in their department either is a public information officer or you have a connection with the media, a lot of times the weather forecasters that weekend of the time change will actually remind viewers that it's time to change the clocks and check those smoke alarms. So not only sending a media release out to the general newsroom, but also reaching out to those meteorologists at your local broadcast stations, whether it's radio or TV. So we just remind them when the time change is coming up. They're glad to incorporate that into their weather forecast, into the segment they have, because the weather segment in a news broadcast is one of the largest segments, if not the largest segment, next to sports in a news program, continuous segments. So they have upwards of 5 minutes, and there's a lot of opportunities there for us to be able to partner. Another great way to know on messaging if it's correct, if you're really wanting to make sure that you're using the latest terminology, I would like to encourage people to download the National Fire Protection Association Educational Messaging Advisory Committee desk reference. The new 2020 edition was just released last week and went live, and you can download that at nfpa.org/EMAC. And that guide has great resources for all different types of topics. But chapter 1 is actually the chapter on smoke alarms, and it'll have the consistent messaging that we can trust, that we can be assured, whether we're talking to the public, whether we're putting out a media release, whether we're doing a public education program on social media. We'll make sure we're using the latest and the greatest message. And that guide also has been updated to where it now incorporates in safety messaging for pet safety and also youth fire setting, which I think is fabulous. So it gives us all a trusted resource, that go-to resource. Download it for free, nfpa.org/EMAC.
And use it verbatim. This isn't something that is, oh, I don't know if I can use this or not. Please use it exactly as written, because it's been tested by, it matches the codes, it matches the research, it matches how people understand words. use it just as it is. Take it. Yeah. You're not stealing it. We'll steal it. It's good.
That's right. No, it's there to share. It's a
there you
great
go.
tool.
It's there to share.
You bet. You bet. Well, that's excellent. Super. Well, Ashley, the next question is for you. Last year, the NVFC and First Alert teamed up to release 2 fabulous online courses: Protect Against the Silent Killer, which focuses on carbon monoxide awareness and alarm training, and the First Line of Defense, Installing Smoke Alarms, which aids in understanding the need for community-based fire safety education and alarm installation. Both courses are free to all NVFC members in the NVFC's virtual classroom, and we'll include a link to them in the video description. Would you explain the motivation behind creating these courses and what participants can learn from taking them?
Yes, of course. So overall, it's so important for First Alert to provide educational messaging. There are so many homes that lack working smoke alarms or the proper protection. So we created the smoke alarm course to provide detailed information on how to properly install alarms, the importance of alarm placement, so on every level and in every bedroom, and maintenance, testing those alarms regularly, changing the batteries, replacing the alarm. As we just discussed, alarms don't last forever. They need to be replaced at least every 10 years, and they are on duty 24/7. So it's really important that we do replace those alarms. And daylight saving time is a great reminder to check those alarms. And then for the CO course, it's so important to be educated on carbon monoxide. Every year, there are over 80,000 CO incidents in the US, and it's the #1 cause of accidental poisoning deaths. So it's so important to shed light on carbon monoxide awareness and the importance of alarm installation. But overall, we created both courses to really support the great work that the fire departments are already doing in their local communities to provide fire safety education. So these courses are also supplemented with alarm donations to local communities to also help reduce the number of fire-related deaths and injuries.
Excellent. Excellent. One of the things I'd like to add to that is your website is just, as you mentioned, you've got all sorts of resources, but Taylor Kinney is your spokesperson for First Alert, and people may not recognize his name, but they certainly recognize his character on TV, Severide, on Chicago Fire. And he's done a really good job the last few years. Tell us a little bit about how that came about, or what type of messaging he's actually delivering through some of his public service announcements.
Yes, we're proud to partner with Taylor Kinney to roll out educational PSAs for both carbon monoxide and smoke alarm safety and fire safety in general. So those educational PSAs can be found on our website at firstalert.com if you're interested in viewing those and sharing those.
If people want to use them, say, with their local broadcast media, is that okay to be able to share them that way?
So yeah, they are for broadcast. So you guys could check those out. And like you said, let us know if you have any comments within this feed as well.
That's great. Excellent. Well, thank you, Ashley. Monica, I've got a question for you. We've still got some time here, and we'll wait for some questions to come in. But one of the things you and I had talked about before we went live is the fabulous opportunities that you've been able to do with your department through partnerships. And one of the partners you talked about is how instrumental the American Red Cross is in the success of your program. Would you like to share that with our audience today?
I'd love to. Yeah, instead of using all of our time, we'll install smoke alarms, we'll check carbon monoxide alarms if we're in a home and see the need for it. But we've been able to work with the American Red Cross, who's been able to provide us with the alarms. They'll do the installs, and even better, that they have for hearing impaired, so that someone, if they're not going to be able to hear the alarm at night, maybe they use hearing aids and they take them out at night. So during the day, they can understand what's happening, but they just aren't aware of a fire. They aren't aware of carbon monoxide and that alert. So they will do those installs, and we can let people know how to reach them. And so it helps us with, especially with like when we go to our schools, there are a few of our schools that are technically outside of our fire jurisdiction, but within our school district, and we partner with our other fire departments there. So the message of, oh, I need an alarm, Great, here you go. I want you to call this phone number or go to this website and they'll take care of you. And if you don't hear anything, give me a call and we'll back it up. So they've been a super partner for us in helping to get that message out. Side note kind of to that too, to know in all of the disaster preparedness education that they do, home fire safety is one of the things that has to be taught. So when you have the American Red Cross come and teach one of their safety classes, you will get home fire safety. You're going to get carbon monoxide and alarm education. So I don't think a lot of fire departments realize what a great partner they are and all the materials you can get from them and the education they could do for you in your fire department.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the challenges I think that many of our communities have faced during these COVID times is one of the symptoms of COVID-19 or the coronavirus is that loss of smell. So I've had older adults that have said, I don't need a smoke alarm in my home because no one smokes, or I'll wake up when I smell the smoke. But as we know, the carbon monoxide actually dulls the senses and it puts us into a deeper level of sleep. Have either of you experienced anyone talking to you about now the new challenges, either from the fire service or the general public, with that loss of smell and how now even working alarms are more critical than they've ever been for early notification? Why don't we start with Ashley to see if you've had any customers or any fire departments reach out to you with that?
Not specifically for COVID related, but I mean, in general, carbon monoxide is odorless, invisible, tasteless, so you can't see it, smell it, taste it. So it's so important that you have those carbon monoxide alarms. You're testing them regularly, changing the batteries. We also have 10-year sealed carbon monoxide alarms available as well. So making sure you're maintaining that, testing it, replacing it every 10 years. But yeah, overall, just installing carbon monoxide alarms, maintaining them, and then also just making sure you're practicing CO safety in general. You mentioned the severe weather. So it's so important never to bring a generator indoors, never leave a car running in your attached garage. As you know, we do see a tendency to have CO incidents spike when there is severe weather. So just keeping in mind carbon monoxide.
Super great points. Monica, how about you? Have you run across anything since the coronavirus pandemic as far as that loss of smell, especially when it comes to smoke alarms and things like that or fires?
Well, and when we've heard things like that, that's been the same all of the time. It really isn't any different. You can't rely on what you can smell when you are asleep and knowing that there's something wrong. How many times have you been warned that your food is burning because an alarm went off and you didn't smell that it was burning? So even when we're awake and alert, we're maybe not quite as alert. So it's perhaps brought more attention to it. I think our bigger issue with COVID has been trying to get those alarms maintained and installed. You might not have the neighbor coming over to help. The fire department might not be able to come in. The Red Cross can only give an alarm to a partner. They can't be in the house to install it. So I think that need for self-maintenance has been increasing during this time.
Absolutely. We've got a couple questions that have come in. The first one here is from Stephanie S. Do you have suggestions for states that don't implement a time change, like Oregon or Washington, California, are all moving towards no time change? What would be a best practice for promoting fire and life safety and the smoke alarm and carbon monoxide alarm maintenance?
Can I
Monica,
take that one?
start with
Yes,
you.
thank
You
you.
bet. You're welcome.
So I actually love that because I want to get away from that change your clock, change your battery anyway, even though that's so sticky, it works really well, we're well trained. But you generally only need to change that battery if it's an old type once a year, so it's not even quite right on message with that. Fall, you have fire prevention week or month. That's a great time to get people to make sure that they've got alarms that are installed and working. As we start to get into that winter time to talk about carbon monoxide, because that's a time we might see that increase or bad weather. Another great one is to pick a day that you're going to remember. Just encourage like your birthday. Hey, how about, or Christmas time or Thanksgiving, or just pick something that annually that means new stuff. Maybe yours should be New Year. You know, January is a new year, new alarm, new time to go. But you'll generally find better deals for them in the fall. So that's where with Fire Prevention Week, a lot of them go on sale, and your companies nearby are going to be promoting them and helping you basically in promoting that fire safety. So that's a really good time to promote it.
Excellent, excellent. Stephanie also has a question, and actually, I'll toss back to Ashley. I apologize. Do you have anything you'd like to add to Monica's description or explanation?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, there's critical times, like for example, in the colder months, CO, and then CO is always important, but definitely a little bit more prevalent in the colder months, as we do see the spike in incidences. And then having that educational messaging push for seasonality, and then also for Fire Prevention Month. Everybody is talking about what they can do during October to help prevent fire-related deaths and injuries. So just really getting those messagings out there in those key seasons.
And one of the things too, I might encourage our viewers is if you do have a relationship again with the media and you've seen a rash of fires or fire fatalities, that's a great opportunity to increase your educational outreach, because we know that the public's interest is typically at peak soon after an emergent event has taken place. And if it's ended in an unfortunate, tragic situation, we see this with the power companies, for example. Many times when severe weather goes through, power companies already have a relationship with their broadcasters, and they're airing those messages: stay back, stay away, stay alive from those down power lines, because electricity can travel through the ground, through standing water. And we as the fire service have that same opportunity. We just need to let our media folks, and even through our social media platforms, if we don't have a relationship, to make sure that we're advocating even stronger during those peak times, wintertime with carbon monoxide, the December, January, February times when we're seeing most of the fatal fire deaths, especially the northern climates. But let's look at what happened down in Texas. Who would have ever thought Texas would have seen colder temperatures than even some of the northern regions? And they definitely were not prepared for that. There'll be a lot of lessons learned, but we'll all be able to come away with even better messaging going forward to be prepared for the next situation that occurs. Super. The next question that Stephanie has is, can you address battery changes in hardwired smoke alarms? A great question.
I can take that one.
Okay.
Stephanie, thank you for keeping us on track. I appreciate it. She's always good for that. Definitely when a carbon monoxide detector is something that's plugged into the hallway, and it'll have a backup battery, that battery is going to last a long time. When you have the hardwired alarms, so that when one goes off, they all go off, which is highly recommended. But that battery isn't used as much, and so it can last a lot longer. But when you hear that chirp, that one beep every 60 seconds, and it's annoying and you want to get rid of that noise, you need to put in that new battery. To also know that I know my firefighters have had to become really quite versed at alarms and all of their different sounds to know when someone calls, and it's usually with carbon monoxide. They're wondering, do I have carbon monoxide? And we're checking to see if there's any possible leak in the house and calling in other experts. But one chirp every 60 seconds is low battery. One chirp every 30 seconds is end of life. The whole entire thing needs to be replaced. And then on the back in really tiny print, there's usually, why do they do that, Ashley? In very tiny print, there's usually directions on what all the different things mean. But what we found is there's always a phone number there. We'll call First Alert, we'll call Kit and say, hey, this is what I've got going on. They have people there to answer that question and tell you what to do to help them out. Now, if we're there helping to change alarms, generally most fire departments and the American Red Cross are using battery only detection and alarms, and so they're not replacing those. That person in their home should replace that whole device, so they have another interconnected one. You can give them something for temporarily if nothing's working, but they really need to get those interconnected hardwired ones replaced with a hardwired device. My personal opinion, not speaking for everyone else.
Excellent, Monica. Thank you. Ashley, do you have anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, so the Hardwire alarms, they are in a lot of new construction homes. They use the existing ceilings wiring. And so that's how you install the alarm. But what is great is that Hardwire alarms, most of them do come with battery backup. So that is, if there is a power outage, the alarm is still functioning in the event of a power outage. So Hardwire alarms, yes, they are prevalent, and they are in a lot of homes.
And we do recommend, again, changing those batteries and those hardwired alarms, just like with the battery operated alarms, because the more power outages you have, the more strain it puts on that battery. And we certainly don't want to have that going off and create a nuisance alarm or the low battery alert at 2 o'clock in the morning when we're sleeping and things of that nature. So a little prevention,
Right.
a little bit of preventative maintenance is certainly key. Another question comes.
To that, just one.
Go ahead, Monica.
That
Yes.
same thing. If you've had a lot of activations, that battery is wearing down because it's been used to make that alarm. So if you've not used it at all, it hasn't, sounded at all, you probably have a pretty strong battery, but it could be getting low, and that's why that recommendation to replace them regularly.
That's a good point. Thanks for sharing that. Georgette M came up with a question here. Where do you suggest the best places to purchase smoke alarms for blind or visually impaired, deaf or hard of hearing, and those with autism? Very good question. Do you want to start with this one, Monica?
Sure. I'm like, besides First Alert, right? First Alert's like, go buy them from First Alert. So there are some great alarms out there that are all incorporated, especially if someone already, has other devices, like when you ring the doorbell, lights flash, or when the phone rings, lights flash. You can get alarms that fit within that same system, so that if any smoke or carbon monoxide is detected, then that same system works. A lot of those will also have a tactile relay, tactile as in feeling, so it'll vibrate. It's like a giant cell phone on vibrate that you put under your mattress, unless you have a super good mattress, and then you have to put it like on top under the pillow, and it vibrates the bed, which is really good actually at waking up every age group in every situation, except for, if I can remember, it was young men who were intoxicated was the only group that a louder noise worked better for than tactile relay. So everyone does well with that. But of course, there aren't as many of them, and they're more expensive. So there are manufacturers that sell those directly. There are search places, that start with an A, Amazon and Walmart and places like that that resell those. And the American Red Cross is another great place to go to get those devices. Some are incorporated as your nightstand to wake you up in the morning in general, like your radio, alarm clock, that's the word, your alarm clock. Some are incorporated. There are alarms out there that work with a voice instead of as much of that just tone. Like for someone with autism, my son has autism, and the alarms that we have in our home, I love, they'll make the beep, beep, beep noise, or the beep, 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 beep for carbon monoxide. And then it says words. It tells me which was the detector. So what part of the house is this coming from, and says to evacuate, tells me whether it was smoke, fire, carbon monoxide, and what we need to do about it. And that is easier for him to hear and handle. In fact, mine test themselves. It's marvelous. They tell me, oh, we're about to check ourselves, and then they beep, and then they say, okay, we're done. And I get a message once a month telling me how we're doing. So there's some neat stuff out there that's all integrated. There's ones out there that will cut the sound on your TV or whatever you were listening to, if it's all integrated. So it cuts that sound, like your Alexa will turn everything else off so you can hear your alarm. There's some neat things out there that you can use to alert you, that will also send information to your phone. So your child with autism, perhaps you don't want such a loud alarm in their room, and you want to they can have a phone that gives them information, the tactile relay. But what's probably most important when it comes with disabilities is learning what you have, what your difficulties are, and what your plan is. and working with that, knowing there is an answer out there. I know some people just give up because they're like, we have to lock our doors and my son will, have a hard time with the loud noise. So I don't want any alarms and there's no way to solve things. And that's not true. There is a solution. And I understand that you might have to have your doors locked from the inside. Maybe he can't be allowed to open up his door by himself, but you can have a plan on how you're going to get him out, how he can be safe. Someone with autism can be taught, I can cover my ears, I can get outside to get away from the noise. You can find an answer and certainly call your local department. And I'm going on rambling, but every state has people who are experts with people with disabilities, and they have answers that they're going to try and figure out. Maybe it's dementia that you're worried about. There's people there that know, so reach out and find some help because there is an answer.
Great points, Monica. Ashley, any input that you have as far as those smoke alarms for the blind, visually impaired, or even deaf or hard of hearing or autism spectrum disorder?
Yeah, Monica, you did a great job covering that. I think I would just, echo that there are alarms out there available at retailers nationwide that do meet the needs of everyone, from, the strobe technology to voice and location alarms that will tell you the type and location of danger. There's also smart alarms that will send you a notification to your phone, whether home or away. So there are a variety of alarms available.
And one of the things I'll add too is, especially in some of these historical districts in our communities where people don't want to be drilling up wainscoting and they don't want to be drilling holes in walls for wiring and things like that, the wireless technology may be a great solution to be able to have the interconnected alarms without actually having physical wires running. And that's where it's really been great. Monica, you'd mentioned that the internet is a great resource. The only thing I would caution our viewers is to make sure that they let their citizens know, make sure it's recognized, that the alarms that they're purchasing is recognized by a national testing laboratory, which all of the ones that are in the big box stores are. But because we're dealing with the internet, we don't know if things are coming from other parts of the world, and they may be pirated where they look like they're an original product, but in fact, they haven't met those stringent testing standards that we have here in this country.
Great point.
Yep.
And unless you've got like super hoorah technology in it, you probably don't need to be spending, $40, $50, $60 per detection. But if you're getting super hoorah ones, then you probably are spending that right now. But just kind of a warning of what to look for.
Exactly.
If they're $4, you might want to think about it.
And one of the things I want to bring up too, and the three of us can kind of talk about this. Years ago, we used to just give the alarms away. We'd set up, events where we just pass the alarms out. But then what we'd find is, as we were responding as the fire and emergency services to those same homes, and we were going there for maybe a medical aid call, maybe someone was having chest pain or someone wasn't feeling well. Guess what? We found the alarm and it still was in the box, and it wasn't doing anybody any good. And we tracked back then, like we do now, the residents and the homes and the addresses and so forth. So we had good data. But now with the installation programs that many communities are doing, we can actually not only install the alarms, but we can educate the public in their own safe environment on ways to reduce risks right in their own home. And those home safety visits, I think, are so vital. Monica, your partnership with the American Red Cross, how essential has that been to be able to go right into the home versus just passing those alarms out like many of us did years ago?
Well, a lot of it is making sure that it's working. You know that when you left, they had a working smoke alarm. If you really had to just send it home with someone and they were like had a super desire, they weren't just getting something free that, yeah, I probably need this, but they really want it. You might want to just make sure that it's activated so that even if it does sit on the shelf for a couple of days, because I'll do that, I'll forget about something. I'll be like, yeah, I need to pay that bill. It'll sit on the table. At least it's up and running. But making sure that it's in the right place. I find most of the people who ask for help now, sometimes it's because they can't afford one, but a lot of times it's because they can't actually physically install it themselves. So if they still have to find a neighbor or someone to come and install it, then we didn't really do them the service. We didn't really solve their problem. They need someone to put them up or they're not sure where to put them. And so us being there really helps. when we go, we're also able to talk about, things that work even better. So like you said, the prevention, we can see in the home and be like, oh, I see you like candles. Here's another option. Or I see that you have, a generator. Do you know about the dangers of carbon monoxide? And then also to talk about fire sprinklers and how very important they are. And I'm finding that we're moving away from focusing on, it's still important to have detection in the home. It's still important to have those alarms in there, but there's so little time, even when an alarm sounds for a fire. Carbon monoxide, you still have, depending on where it's coming from, can give you that alert and still protect people. But generally, there's still some amount of poisoning that's happening. And so trying to prevent those issues from starting in the first place and using suppression to take care of that is really important. It deserves a lot of our time.
Absolutely. Ashley, with regards to smoke and or carbon monoxide alarms, do those packagings come with detailed instructions? Can a homeowner install the alarm themselves if they have the ability to do that? Would you like to talk about that?
Oh, yes, of course. The alarm does come with a user's manual. So recommend following all the instructions in the manual to install your alarms. You can also go on our website as well to find the alarms under the product you purchase. So those resources are available.
Super, super. Because that's the number one question I think people are asking. If they have the ability to purchase the alarms, what type of alarm should I get? When they go to the local store, they see a lot of different alarms. Which one's better than another? And it all depends on what their specific needs are.
Yeah, exactly. So, before you even go to the store, consumers are going to know, like, I have a hardwire alarm, I need to get a battery alarm, I'm interested in a tenured sealed battery alarm or a smart alarm or a variety of different features. So that's definitely important to note. And then just follow the instructions within the user's manual when you are installing.
Great advice, Ashley. We just had another question that came in from Ann O. This one is for a standard 3-bedroom home. How many alarms do you recommend? And where are the best places to install them? So I'll throw this out to the panelists and you can tell me who wants to go first.
I'll take it. You want it, Ashley?
Oh, I can. It doesn't matter. I would say that alarms, they should be an easy way to remember where alarms should be installed is every level, every bedroom. And in the central locations outside each bedroom. So I think that is an easy way to remember it. So every level, every bedroom.
Right.
Love it.
So you'd have 3, 1 for each bedroom. That one in that central location outside of the bedroom, outside of any sleeping area. If you had a super large house where they were very far apart, you might need a 4th one on that same level, but generally most people don't. But now the next question you didn't answer was how many levels of the home, or is there a basement? Is it an upstairs, downstairs? And so then, assuming you had a basement, we need to put another one in. So that one on the main floor outside of the sleeping areas in that hallway counts as the one for that floor. And then in each of the bedrooms, but if one of those bedrooms was downstairs, or we had a downstairs, then we need another one for that downstairs. We need upstairs, downstairs, anywhere that there's living area, even if there's not a bedroom there. And then really highly recommend that interconnected, whether you do that by wires or wireless. That really does help, because if that alarm goes off downstairs, you want to know about it upstairs in your bedroom. You want that alarm to be right next to you so you hear it and you know to take action right away. I had a friend who had a carbon monoxide alarm go off near the furnace downstairs, woke up and was like, of course, our first thought is this is probably just some kind of nuisance. This isn't really an alarm. And then the second one went off and went, whoa, wait a minute. This is something we need to take care of. But even better with, however, they didn't know how long it took them for that one to wake them up that was so far away. And so having those interconnected, you'd wake up right away, know that you need to get up and get out and take action.
I just thought of a question I'd like to ask both of you, and you can decide who wants to go first. Should we be installing alarms in unheated areas such as an attic or a garage? And when I'm saying alarms, smoke alarms.
All right, no, generally not. And really nowhere where there's going to be a nuisance, even though most fires are happening in the kitchen, and your carbon monoxide is more likely to be coming from the garage or coming from down by your furnace, or your water heater, somewhere where you've got that propane or natural gas or that's burning. If you put your detection too close to those, you could have them going off for low amounts that are just one little burst and is dissipating and is not an emergency. Or when you're cooking and you've just overcooked something, but it's not actually on fire yet. So we recommend that you don't have detection right next to those areas. And that is in the instructions will tell you how far away that they should be. But I know, like from a cooking appliance, we prefer 20 feet if you can. I know a lot of houses in my town can't get that far away. And so we make sure that we've got something smarter that can tell the difference between burning and flaming food. But we don't actually want them right next to there, because you could get that alarm going off so often that you start to believe every alarm is not an emergency. And it's just a pain anyway. No one wants alarms going off. So having it 20 feet away, not in the garage, but in the hallway, from there.
Excellent. Ashley, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, just a safe distance away, like 15, 20 feet from any major appliance, just to, reduce any nuisance alarms that might happen, because we know that people do remove batteries because of nuisance alarms. So, that 10-year sealed battery, you can't remove the alarm. So that's even more important to help reduce the number of fire-related incidents and deaths in homes. So, making sure you are installing the alarm properly in the proper locations is so important.
With that too, you were talking about the taking the batteries out, and with battery packs and that, something to make sure that you're sharing with people when you're installing alarms and letting them know about is that not only do they have a test button, and we should be testing them monthly and regularly, but there is a hush button, sometimes the same button, which tells it to be quiet. And as long as the smoke or carbon monoxide levels are going down or reducing for the next 15 minutes, it's still constantly checking, but it's not sounding. And as long as that decreases, gives you a chance to open up windows, to air out the home, to take care of the actual problem. And that way you don't have to take the batteries out, because what happens sometimes is it really is an emergency. It is carbon monoxide and the levels are so high and you just don't realize it because you can't tell. That alarm will continue to sound even when you hit that hush button or that silence button. And that tells you do need to get out right away and let the fire department come and figure out what's wrong. You don't keep investigating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where, again, as public fire and life safety educators, we need to make sure we match our message clearly, because when we talk about the number one area of the home where most fires occur is the kitchen, I've had homeowners that have said, well, I'm going to put the smoke alarm right over my stove, or well within that 10, 15, or 20-foot distance area that we know is a best practice. And also they may be using an alarm such as an ionization alarm that may be more prone to those nuisance alarms from cooking and things like that. So it's very important that we match our message. And when we educate, we sometimes can get questions that come up through that educational process. And if they don't get answered, it leaves the consumer with a misconception, basically, as far as where they should actually be putting the alarms. So the instructions are very clear, and we appreciate First Alert again for being a sponsor today, because it's really important that we're providing this much needed information when people think that their homes are safe, but a lot of times people don't think fire is going to happen to them. They think it happens to somebody else. We want to get people thinking about prevention before the incident occurs, so safety is always on the forefront of everyone's mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, smoke and carbon monoxide alarm installation is so important. But also, as you mentioned, a lot of fire incidences do happen in the kitchen. So it's so important to have a fire extinguisher within reach and really know how to use it. The acronym PASS is a great reminder for people to educate consumers on how to use a fire extinguisher, and just really have that in reach.
Absolutely.
Or
Great
have the
point.
cool, easy to use ones that fire stop. Those are awesome. The little
Yes.
hairspray kind of ones.
Spray. Yes, point and spray.
I know, not UL listed because they don't have a right kind of handle, but I like those. I recommend those.
Yep. So there's products out there, especially if someone may not have a lot of strength, not a lot of dexterity. There's products out there to be able to keep themselves safe. We want to remind anyone anytime they do have a fire, make sure evacuation is the first step before they use that mitigation device. Make sure that someone's calling 911 when safely outside, and make sure everyone's out. Too many times in our careers, we've seen people that have actually tried to fight the fire. And typically, if the fire doesn't go out with one fire extinguisher, everyone should leave, never allow that fire to get between you and a clear exit. And the pass, pull, aim, squeeze, sweep is a perfect acronym to be able to remember what steps to follow in order to put that fire out. But well, I think, do either of you have anything else and some parting thoughts, closing thoughts that you want to leave with our viewers? Maybe one thing that you can think of that could kind of motivate them, either from the fire service perspective, or if we have civilians that are joining us here today, what would be one takeaway that maybe each of you would want to leave our audience with today?
Sure. So their alarms make different sounds, whether it's detecting smoke or fire, whether it's detecting carbon monoxide, but it really doesn't matter when you hear an alarm sounding. It means that we need to get out. We need to get to safety. We need to go outside to our meeting place and call 911 for help, and then let the firefighters come and solve whatever the problems are, find anyone who wasn't able to escape. Definitely reminding people about fire safety, about alarms, the need to have this detection in their home to make sure that it's working, and that maintenance is definitely worth it. When you're getting things out in social media, you're standing out on the side of the road with a sign, whatever it is, there's a way to do it. There's a way to take a few minutes for you with your busy schedule to make sure the public knows.
Great points, Monica. Thank you. Ashley?
Yeah, so fire safety in general is so important, especially this past year when consumers are spending so much time at home. It's so important to gather your family, talk about fire safety, install your alarms on every level, every bedroom, test those alarms regularly, change those batteries, or, with your tenured sealed battery alarms, make sure you're testing those as well. Also remembering those alarms don't last forever. They need to be replaced at least every 10 years. So the daylight saving time is a great reminder to check that coming up. And then also plan and practice an escape route with your family. Plan 2 ways out of each room, plan a meeting spot, a safe distance away from the home. So if there is an emergency, everybody knows where to meet. So just practicing fire safety in general is extremely important, and being extremely mindful, and just make a plan.
Great advice. Great advice. We do have one last question. Kathleen G. The expense of replacing hardwired alarms has made it difficult for some to keep up a good system. Are there any agencies that can assist with this to keep the cost down? Our department only works with battery operated alarms, as do most. Any suggestions?
Well, not very popular, but why are we in the business of giving these away to everyone for every situation? It's the cost of owning a home, but we do want people to have them and to use them. So we give them out a lot and to a lot of people. And definitely those smoke alarms are the least expensive ones that are available. Sometimes that hardwire can cost a little bit extra. So then it becomes up to what's most important, making sure they have a couple of working smoke alarms and putting them next to them till they can afford to replace them, finding someone else and to help them. Maybe there's a community member who would help with that cost, or even just to provide the difference in the cost, between what you're able to purchase and provide and what it costs to get that hardwired alarm in there. But I think that's something we need to find a solution to, because we're going to see more and more of these. More houses are required to have hardwired alarms installed, and they're more than 10 years old and they need to be replaced. So not a good answer, but I kind of question how much we should really be involved in smoke alarms.
Good point. Ashley, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so there is programs available, that do provide different types of alarms. So, reaching out to those agencies or the manufacturer to see if there is a possibility for those alarms is the best advice I would have.
And I know some fire departments have actually reached out to semi or retired electricians and brought them on board with their multidisciplinary team, so that as those needs came up and maybe that homeowner didn't have the ability, they were able to partner together with a Meals on Wheels program or some of the other community programs that are already going into communities and going into the homes. It could be a community paramedicine program where they're checking vital signs of an older adult, for example. So there are some opportunities, some options there. One last question, Ashley: does First Alert have any other resources departments can utilize to help with smoke and carbon monoxide alarm installations and messaging?
Yes, of course. We have so many educational resources on our website at firstalert.com. We do have installation videos available for depending on what type of alarm you have in your home. We also have educational resources that both fire departments and families can use to learn about fire safety, carbon monoxide safety, and that fire extinguisher safety. You can download the resources like escape planning templates, coloring books, brochures, and so much more. So I would encourage you to visit our safety corner on firstalert.com to learn more.
Excellent. Excellent. So, well, I think this is going to pretty much close up our discussion today. We've had a lot of great questions that have come in, and we've provided some really comprehensive information to give both our firefighters and also the public some options and some opportunities to be able to keep themselves and their families safe. I want to thank our panelists, Ashley Gocken and Monica Colby, for their time and for providing us with their insight and expertise, as well as for First Alert for sponsoring this live event. I also want to thank everyone who joined us online. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion. We'll include links in this video's description to First Alert's website, as well as to the National Volunteer Fire Council's Fire Corps program. We'll also include a link to Protect Against the Silent Killer and First Line of Defense Installing Smoke Alarms, the two fabulous online courses created by the National Volunteer Fire Council and First Alert that educate participants about CO and smoke alarms, respectively. A reminder that this course is free, or these courses rather are free for NVFC members in the NVFC virtual classroom. If you're not already a member and you want to join, I would highly encourage you to go to www.nvfc.org/join. And if you have any questions about this discussion or had a question that we didn't have time to get to, please email the National Volunteer Fire Council's communication coordinator, Matthew Odom, at matthew@nvfc.org. Again, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon and keep connecting with your communities.